Hi YouTube, thanks for checking out my video today. Now, as my friends know, I'm a huge fan of the Mighty Car Mod Show and also Roadkill, possibly two of my favorite things. So I was inspired to go out and buy a car that honestly looked kind of like a crap car but could be cool. And my first thought, of course, was American Muscle Car. And I just had to get one and bring it home and see what I could do with minimal amount of capital investment, some spray paint, some stickers, and some good old-fashioned know-how and some simple hand tools to see what I could come up with, and something that would actually be cool and fun to drive and moderately fast at least. And this is what I came up with. And so what I found, sitting up in North Hollywood under some guy's tree on 4 flats and the windows smashed out of it, was a 1971 AMC Javelin SST with the AMX package, which is by itself a pretty cool car. And it was already green, like you see it, although it was so filthy, it was actually more of a brown green. So I took it home on a tow truck, spent a little bit of money on it, not too bad, under $5,000 which that's not bad for a big old V8. It's a 360 Hurst 4-speed from the factory, and it actually had side pipes on it when I bought the car. Now, they were all blown out and rusted, so of course I had to get rid of them, and I did some nice new straight pipes, and just used the same mounting locations and the same style to kind of keep the factory theme going. So after putting a new windshield in it, which you have to drive legally, I got going on some other things and cleaned up the paint, which took a good probably 2 days of just polishing and cleaning and getting it as good as I can without having to repaint the car. And I think it shows pretty good. It's not a great paint job, to be honest. Somebody did kind of a, pretty amateur job at some point, but it's protected the metal for the most part, and it looks cool. I mean, it's just a fun car to go thrash around in, and I don't have to worry about getting, scratches or nicks or stuff like that when I go driving. So it kind of suits me perfectly. As I said, the car was sitting on 4 flats. So what I did was I went and got some brand new Hankook Ventus tires put on it, which work really great. I really like these tires, even though this car does have quite a bit of power. So it does tend to eat tires when you smash the gas. But these will last for a little while because they're pretty good tires. The stock wheels actually are still on the front. Of course, the tires are, the Hankooks, as I just said. And the rear ones are the Mickey Thompsons, which were already on there when I bought the car, so that was kind of a bonus for buying it. Another cool thing that it came with was the shackles and the short grip rear end, which again are from the factory. So the car had a lot of potential to start with. Now, some of the things I needed to do, besides the glass and the tires and stuff like that, was clean the piss out of the interior, which came out really great. But when I bought it, it was pretty gross, full of broken glass, all kinds of little critters and stuff that wanted to kill me. And just, general crud. As Marty and Moog would put it, I had to do some automotive archaeology. And there was, a moderate amount of pubic hair in it. But not too terrible. Now, one thing that kind of grinds my gears as far as looking for an American muscle car is, back in the 70s, it wasn't all about power and huge engines. Most of the cars that they made, honestly, kind of had sort of dinky power plants in them. And with the Mopars, things like that, especially the 318s, which, don't get me wrong, is a great motor if you're trying to make it last a long time. If they're in good shape, they'll run forever. They just make no power whatsoever. They're pretty sluggish. The Fords tended to do a little better. Even the 289s, you could get the Hypos, you get the 302s. They put out a good amount of power. You could have some fun with them, especially being a small block motor. Now, the AMCs, there's a common misconception that they just kind of raided the Chrysler parts bins and used Chrysler Mopar engines and put their own stuff on it. That's actually not true. Their engines were actually built by themselves. Blocks were cast and in-house, and they used their own parts. So the 360 that's in the AMC is not a Mopar 360. It's a different engine. That's not to say there's not GM parts on these things, which there are, but the engine, internals, all that are actually AMC. and they make quite a bit of power for what they are. Now, this one, according to the VIN code, was a original 360 4-speed car and came with a 2-Venturi carburetor and a 4-Venturi carburetor and a 4-barrel manifold. At some point, somebody swapped that out to a 2-Venturi 2-barrel manifold. If I could, I would slap them really hard, but again, this was in the 70s, so they probably did it to save fuel, and they did a nice job. The car runs great after I gave it some basic tuning, dialed in the ignition timing, cleaned out the filters, you know, all the standard stuff, cleaned the spark plugs. So it runs really, really great, and it's got great power. So the factory power rating would have been about 285, 290, with the 4-barrel manifold and the 4-Venturi carburetor. As it sits, it's probably about 260, 265. So my next project is probably going to be to correct that situation. And just to be funny, I might throw a little bit of nitrous on it. Because why not? A little bit of go fast in a bottle never hurt anything, right? So as I was talking about, it's amazing what you can do with some Plasti-Dip and black spray paint just to kind of pretty things up and make them look better. So when I got the car, the engine was painted a hideous light green that didn't really match the rest of the car, which had just kind of been sprayed over the original turquoise painted block and everything else. So what I did was, I went down to the local parts store and got some engine degreaser and cleaner, sprayed the heck out of everything, and went to scrubbing with a brass wire bristle brush to get all the loose paint, grease, all the junk off of there. So I took off the carburetor, the distributor cap, moved all the wires, got everything out of the way so I could get to things without getting a bunch of overspray everywhere, and just went to town painting it from the valve covers on up all black and left the block green, which I think looks pretty cool. It's kind of stealthy. It's not going to win any shows, but I mean, what we're going for is just some good, solid street cred with a good-looking motor. And as we all know, paint helps protect the surface too. So anytime you have a bare surface or stuff where the paint's flaking off, you can't go wrong by painting over it. Even if the paint doesn't match, whatever, who cares? The primary concern is to protect what's underneath it. Now, it's always good if you can make it look cool too. And for $10 worth of high temperature spray paint, you really can't go wrong. And it holds up pretty well if you clean the surface beforehand. And you can even use a self-etching primer, which I've done before, but I didn't do on this car. And it's still holding up pretty darn well. Yeah, I've taken the hose to it and, sprayed cleaners on it, and it stays on there really nice. So it worked out. As for the body of the car, so it had some decals on it, which are actually still there. And again, some Plasti-Dip is your friend. I just went over and Plasti-Dipped over what was there, and then edged it with some red pinstripe tape. And again, we're just going for some good street eyeball factor. We're not looking to win concourse best in show. That's not what this car's about. If you wanted to put $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 into a paint and body job on this, you probably could win a couple shows because, it's in fantastic shape. It's never been wrecked. All the panels are straight. The gaps are good. And it's a good-looking car. 98% of all the original parts and trim are there. So you could really do a lot with it. But for me, it's more fun to kind of use the car as is and just make it run really well and make sure it's solid and reliable and at least moderately safe and have fun with it. If some collector wants to buy it and restore it, then more power to them if that's their thing. It's not really what I'm into, but everyone has their own idea of what a car should be and what they want to do with it. So like I said, I just kind of changed up some of the look of the car. The graphics that were on it were pretty lame. Honestly, it kind of looked like a 70s jet ski. The stickers really didn't even match the car. So you can't go wrong with black with some red edging. And what I did was I did a hammered finish on the wheels. They were just bright silver and they were in great shape. So I just cleaned them really well and sprayed them with some hammered finish black paint, which I think looks pretty nice. With the black exhaust, the black accents, the black wheels, and the black interior with that bright green paint that kind of helps it pop. And I think it's come out pretty well so far. I think, honestly, if any of the guys from Roadkill or Mighty Car Mods were here, I think I'd get a thumbs up, a little bit of approval. And the important stuff is that everything works, and the car drives awesome. You can go out and do massive burnouts and donuts and just thrash on it. And, you know, you don't come home and be like, oh, I got a rock chip in it, now my day is ruined. On this one, you're like, oh, all right, you know, a little bit of black spray paint touch-up, and we're good to go again. I do like keeping things stock looking as much as possible, but sometimes a matter of convenience or fun factor demands to do something different. So, for instance, for whatever reason, the stock oil pressure gauge on this thing doesn't really do much. So, easy solution, you go down to the local auto parts store, you get yourself a cheaply priced oil pressure gauge, which works fantastic. A lot of the other gauges you can do without, but you definitely want to know what your oil pressure is doing, because that'll be your first sign that something catastrophic is probably going to happen. And this one works great. You know, you fire it up, it's at anywhere from 55 to 60 psi. After it warms up and idles, you know, between 10 and 15 is usually what it sits at. So one cool little thing that actually came with the car that I had to install and get working is one of these retro auto sound radios that fits in the factory spot, and it looks pretty much factory, like what would have come back in the 70s, but it's actually all digital, so it sounds really great. You can hook your iPod up to it, so it's just kind of a nice touch to have some modern tunes, especially if you're stuck with something that originally had just an AM or a tape deck or something. You got to bring it up to the 21st century, at least a little bit. So let's fire it up and see how it sounds. We'll get an idea of what a cool old American muscle car sounds like that I found under a tree for a couple of days. And I'm not sure how good the sound reproduction is going to be over an iPhone, but we'll find out. And so there it is. Thank you for watching. And please leave a comment below. Let me know, do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you want to buy it? And share your stories. Please feel free. If you got some videos of your car, something cool, maybe a neat story behind it, I'd like to hear it. So thank you.
I'm alive, I can feel the blood rushing through my veins, and that's all I need to know, 'cause I'm not looking for a change, 'cause I got friends and enemies, but it just don't bother me, 'cause as long as I believe, I can breathe.
Metamorphosis, battle axe fortress, 400 horsepower, full moon the sorceress. Swollen members and my girl NF, the predators and the Terminator, the trash called breath. Why hurt them later? We can do so much damage now. Don't track them when I hit them, so much garbage around. Yells, bells, and whistles like a carnival sound.